The Atlantic gray seal is one of the largest predators you can encounter in the New England waters. Adult males can weigh more than 600 pounds. They're powerful, incredibly fast underwater, and apparently, they really like scuba fins. But as intimidating as an animal this size might look, gray seals are also incredibly intelligent and curious, and sometimes that curiosity leads to encounters like this. This particular seal followed me around like an underwater puppy dog. But to explain how I ended up being chased around the Atlantic by a 600-pound seal, we need to head about 6 miles offshore. Off the coast of New Hampshire and Maine is a small collection of rocky islands known as the Isles of Shoals. From the mainland, they're barely visible on the horizon, but people have been making the journey out here for hundreds of years. European fishermen were working these waters by the early 1600s, taking advantage of an incredibly productive fishing grounds surrounding the islands. And because of their location, the shoals became an ideal offshore base. Instead of sailing all the way back to the mainland every day, fishermen could live there, process their catch, and head directly back to the fishing grounds. What looks like a handful of isolated rocks today eventually developed into an actual community. There were homes, businesses, churches, and taverns. Generations of fishermen lived there and worked out there, surrounded by the North Atlantic. Over time, though, the fishing industry changed. The population of fish declined, communities disappeared, and the islands became much quieter. But they never became empty, and some of their most recognizable residents today aren't people at all. They're gray seals. Gray seals are native to the North Atlantic, and populations can be found from northeastern United States and Canada all the way across to Europe, and they're perfectly designed for life out here. On land, they're maybe not so graceful, but the second they hit the water, they're completely different animals. They're fast, agile, and incredibly comfortable in an environment where they're relying on an entire pile of equipment just to survive. And although they're predators, divers aren't on the menu. Fish make up most of their diet. What makes diving around them so interesting isn't their curiosity. You can't make a wild seal interact with you, and you shouldn't try. The best thing you can do is give them space and let them decide whether you're interesting enough to investigate. As we approached the islands with Portsmouth Scuba, we could already see seals hauled out along the shoreline. There were heads popping up out of the water around the rocks, so there was absolutely no question that they were here. The question was whether we'd actually see them once we got underwater. We got our equipment together, went through the dive briefing, and started gearing up. And honestly, this is one of those dives where you're sitting on the boat looking at the animals and you're just ready to get in the water. And so we did. Once we got below the surface, the entire character of the islands changed. Above the water, the Isle of Shoals are exposed rocks surrounded by open Atlantic. Underneath, these rocks continue down into landscape of ledges, boulders, and kelp. And somewhere out there were the seals we'd seen from the boat. The trick was finding them, or I was about to learn, letting them find us. At first, a seal would appear, take a look at us, and then disappear back into the water. Then another would show up somewhere else. Sometimes you'd feel a twitch on your fins and turn around to realize that one had been watching from behind you. The really cool part was watching how differently they moved underwater. There's something else I love about diving places like the Isle of Shoals. You're not just exploring a dive site. You're swimming around a place where people have been sailing, fishing, living, and occasionally wrecking ships for centuries. These waters have seen generations of fishermen, storms, and maritime traffic. And when you're underwater, looking back at those islands, it's hard not to think about how different this place must have looked 100 years ago. Today, though, we weren't here looking for shipwrecks. We were here looking for the locals. And one of them had become very interested in me. At first, he was curious and following us. Then he started getting closer. And then he discovered my fins. I've encountered plenty of wildlife underwater, but there's something different about an animal choosing to interact with you. We didn't feed this seal, we didn't chase it, there was nothing keeping it here, and at any point, it could have turned and disappeared into the Atlantic. Instead, it kept coming back. And that's what made this encounter so memorable. It wasn't just seeing a gray seal, it was getting a brief glimpse of how curious these animals can be. Eventually, like every dive, we had to head back up. And after spending the dive watching these animals move effortlessly through the water, heading back to the surface felt a little disappointing. The Isle of Shoals already would have been an incredible place to dive just because of the history surrounding these islands. But getting in the water with the Atlantic gray seal made this a dive I'll remember for a very long time. Huge thank you to Portsmouth Scuba, Captain Jack, and everyone who made this trip possible. And if you enjoyed coming along for this dive, consider subscribing to Descent Disciples. We've got a lot more coming ahead. And until next time, I'll see you underwater.